Tonight on the Star Trek Universe podcast, we are getting to your feedback right after this.
Welcome to the Star Trek Universe podcast. My name is Matthew Carroll.
I'm David C. Robertson.
Hey, David C. Roberson.
Hey, Matthew Carroll.
You know, it's good to hear from you on this fine Sunday night.
Is it good to hear from me specifically, or just from anyone, you lonely bastard?
Little bit of both. Little column A, little column B.
A little bit of column C.
The undefined column. I like it.
Truly the final frontier.
Let's get into some Star Trek feedback, my friend. What are people what are people asking us about or telling us about? Or let's do it.
All right. So our first, our first piece of feedback, I bumped it up. All right. I bumped it up to the head. It was a more recent entry.
Oh yeah. I don't even think you need to say that. I think we have no reason to be chronological.
We have no reason to be chronological, but I'm saying it because I love the dude's email.
All right. Well, let's do it.
This guy's, his email address. I liked his email too, but guy's name's Bill Reed, but his Gmail is 2 Rihannsu. And that is, I'm pretty sure that's a reference to, the Diane Duane Star Trek books about the Rihannsu, which is the, it's a non-canon, name for the Romulans.
That's right.
I'll get into that a little bit, but, dude, love that. Major props for that.
That's a very deep cut Star Trek joke. I was like, Rihan shoes. That sounds like something from Star Trek, but I can't even remember. That's from a book. Yeah. I remember it very vaguely.
I don't know if he just looked at his shoes and went to Rihan shoes, or I don't know if he makes shoes. I don't know what the deal is. Let us know, Bill. But I dig it. Bill says, "Hey guys, great show. I've been a Star Trek fan for a long time now. Have also been a podcast fan for a really long time, but I've always hated Star Trek podcasts. I found this one through your Instagram page. One of you likes Star Trek action figures because you're always liking my posts." That's me.
That's you.
That's me.
You are the current purveyor of our Instagram. So
yeah. Which, by the way, Star Trek Universe Podcast is the name of our Instagram.
Yeah. Go check it out.
He says, "I have to say I am pleasantly surprised. You guys convinced this old codger to give Discovery a whirl, and I have to say I wound up actually loving it."
Oh, that's awesome.
Right? I think it was Dave's comment about all the fans who rallied against TNG back in the day that made me pull my head out of my ass and see what the fuss was about for myself. After listening to you guys, I stopped watching almost all of the YouTubers who are so ardently rooting for Discovery's failure because I saw them for what they really are, narrow-minded gatekeepers to a franchise with vast potential. There are always possibilities, Spock said. Anyway, I'll stop rambling, but just one more thing. It made perfect sense to me that Matt said he loves Buffy a few casts ago. He's always talking about how much he wants there to be stakes.
Good one, Bill. That email means a lot to me. That's really sweet, Bill. I just like that, if our cast can bring someone into any point in Star Trek, but especially someone who'd kind of fallen out, who was not giving Discovery a chance, because admittedly it started off rough and a lot of us kind of wanted to drop it at first, but I really think it had there's value there, and it's great that our cast could help someone, get into it. And if he's making Buffy steak references, I like it all the more.
Yeah, and I do want to quickly tell the listeners, I know I kind of glossed over what was going on. There's a fantastic series of books by Diane Duane. You can I think you can find them in an omnibus format. It's called Rihannsu, the Bloodwing Chronicles. And this, like, it was originally 3 books, and then they, like, expanded it. Like, in 2006, they released the 5th book, initially in PDF form. But they're fantastic. My Enemy, My Ally, The Romulan Way, Swordhunt, Honor Blade, and The Empty Chair. They do not sync up with, like, Star Trek Nemesis. Like, their remans they predate that. The first book came out in 1984.
Right.
But it's really fantastic. Just, I don't know, I retcon it as a separate parallel reality and just enjoy the hell out of them. They're very good. They're also very related to Diane Duane's novels Spock's World and Dark Mirror, and Margaret Wander Bonanno's Dwellers in the Crucible, which is fantastic. All of that is so good and is some of the best Star Trek out there if you're willing to dig into some books and, you know, acknowledge that it's just headcanon it as an alternate reality.
That's cool.
But yeah, I loved that. You don't see a lot of people with that knowledge.
Yeah, and that especially as a Gmail name, like that's deep. I dig it. Like I've got a friend who has Trek in his Gmail name. Like and it's funny because he uses it for all of his business and stuff, but it's just always like, you know, Trekker is like his Gmail name or whatever. And I'm like, that's funny, but like having that deep of a cut is really great.
Oh yeah, and you know, and my gosh, I would hope someone out there from the group, the older group, would might be listening to this. I didn't know what a Rihannsu was until I was like wandering around the AOL message boards
back in the day.
Back when I was a teenager, and I saw Rihannsu, a Rihannsu message board, and I had to go in and go, like, you know, I've been a Star Trek fan my entire life. What the hell's a Rihannsu? And the worlds that opened up.
Right. That's rad. What if, like, his name is not a reference to that at all?
I'll be sad.
You read into Rihannsu. You're like, that has to be a pun. And it's actually just like, he has a business called Rihannsu or something.
Well, you know, he had the stakes comment, so I was like, clearly this guy likes puns.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Practicing the old punalingus.
No. Nope.
What?
I won't allow it.
Oh. Listeners of DC on Screen will tell you that me and Jason have been talking about punalingus for quite a long time.
I bet you have.
We're punalingual that way.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for that email, Bill. That's rad.
Thank you absolutely so much. You're awesome in my book. And let me know which Star Trek, and I follow many action figure centric Star Trek, accounts over on Instagram.
Oh yeah, you do.
Yeah, I'm sick. All right. So our next piece of feedback comes from Randy Christopher, old buddy Randy. Says, greetings again, you casters. Just finished listening to episode 107 in the cast. Sorry, we haven't done a feedback since then. Dave made a reference that I wholeheartedly agree with. Of course, it has more to do with TOS and the movies than the episode of Discovery. It has always bothered me that Zephram Cochrane the Zephram Cochrane character of Metamorphosis and the one from First Contact were such wildly different people. In the original series, Cochrane is the epitome of the uptight, straight-laced, stoic, stick-in-the-mud type, and the Cochrane of the movies has absolutely none of those qualities. Don't get me wrong, I did enjoy Cromwell's version of the character, but there's absolutely no way that his version somehow morphed into the version that we saw marooned with the companion so many years later. I can agree with Matthew regarding small changes to characters when they must be played by different actors, and that it isn't even necessary that they look all that much alike. But wholesale destruction of the nature of a character is wrong and just lazy writing. The writers of First Contact took too much creative license in this case. They wanted to tell a story and bend the character to make it fit their intended narrative. Not good and very annoying. Anyway, great show as always. Keep up the good work. Okay, so it bothers me, but think of how many old people you know who are super uptight and conservative and who, like, you know, were wild as hell when they were kids. Maybe even had kids out of wedlock. You know, like, you start finding stuff.
I like how that's your
Yeah, because, like, okay, look, we grew up in Alabama, all right? I grew up in a very Southern Baptist situation, but you would have these old people old people in the church who would just like, I can't believe she's having a kid out of wedlock, But then you find out, like, oh, they got married at the, end of a shotgun because they had a kid out of wedlock.
You start doing the math on people's ages and like, oh, you guys got married real young because she was pregnant. I see what happened there.
Yeah.
And you're like, not to judge them, but the fact that they're judging you so hard or the other people so hard, it's like, yeah. So people do change. People do become more conservative. And I also think that, like, as I mentioned in the cast, and then to be honest, I haven't seen the TOS episode in a long time. I do remember it very vaguely, but I definitely haven't seen those characters side by side. But I think that I think I said this in the previous cast, but when he stands a lot taller at the end of the episode when Sarek greets him, and there's this moment where it's almost like he's accepting his destiny.
Yeah.
And I always, I can easily see that, like, maybe he starts to believe his own, like, press, as it were. Like, so there could be drastic changes in his character. Combine that with an actor change and of course a time period change in the making of the thing, and I think you just get a very different portrayal.
Yeah, I think I think there's a way to headcanon that, whereas like and the way I've always kind of headcanoned it is that Zephram Cochrane at First Contact, I mean, they're war torn. They've been in the middle of conflict. There's even some evidence to suggest that he's been exposed to radiation over a long period of time.
That's true.
He's an alcoholic. He's got real character flaws, but, over the course, because it would be centuries, right?
Right.
So over the course of a couple of centuries, when they find him where he's just been like stuck in this insular environment, being rejuvenated by the gas cloud, the companion, the gas cloud, the energy cloud, whatever you want to call it, the companion. Like, he's sort of been stuck in this little like bubble. And I think like he just, he looks back with rose-colored glasses about how humanity is and how it should be. And, that does happen when people get older, as they get more and more like into their own ideas, and they stuck in their own ideas, and they kind of shut out the rest of the world. And then they get very prejudiced against any ideas that are different than their own.
Right.
So I think it does make sense in that way. If you kind of bend it a little bit. I also think Brandon Braga and Ronald D. Moore were basically making an allegory for Gene Roddenberry with the First Contact version of Zephram Cochrane. Interesting.
Well, I think too, you look at the characters within the world of First Contact. Mm-hmm. They were all shocked at the kind of character they met, because they were like, we're going to meet Zephram Cochrane, and they go down to help him. And then when they meet him, they're shocked at this alcoholic, like whatever. And they're like trying to turn him into the man they think he should be. And that's the whole plot of the movie. But like that, even the idea that he doesn't even line up in their canon. You know what I mean? Like, mm-hmm. That's the whole point, is like, he's not the man he is supposed to become.
Yeah, I feel like there was a little bit of a, I feel like there was Roddenberry commentary there, not that they're ever going to say it. And they might have already said it, I don't know. But where he's like, this guy, I never met him. This guy you talk about, I never met him. The only vision I had was dollar signs, and I just wanted to get rich. And then Riker tells him, don't try to be a great man, just be a man and let history make its own judgments.
Mm-hmm. Great line.
Absolutely. And I think maybe the character did wind up buying into his own hype, kind of like I feel like Roddenberry did to some degree.
Yeah, it's a valid point when you it really is a valid point, thinking about Roddenberry and his earlier days and his writings about conservatism and stuff that you've mentioned on the cast before, and then his later days when he's like a completely different, political animal at least, and seeming to be a completely different man.
And that's the way of people. We get feedback sometimes on my other show, DC on Screen, where people are kind of confused because they'll go back and listen to an episode and be like, well, you're saying this now, but back then you had this opinion. I'm like, because people change.
Yeah. And especially in this kind of media where your first impression of a thing can change drastically. I mean, I did not like Discovery the first watch, but on that second watch, I really fell into it, partially because I think I just forgave those first 2 episodes and knew that going in, I was like, I'm going to dislike the first 2 episodes. And then I think like the reduction of my expectations actually like led to me liking the first 2 episodes a lot more and finding a lot more nuance in them that I did originally.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
So yeah, I think there's enough leeway since Zephram Cochrane has been stuck on that planet for like over 100 years or whatever it was.
Yeah, that's I think maybe the best point here is that like, especially if you've been in isolation for that long, who knows who you'd become. Just thinking about other characters in media that like live that long and how far they've changed.
Mm-hmm. And I know you didn't bring up the physical differences in the Zephram Cochranes because they do look very different. I mean, we don't know what the constant rejuvenation from the companion is doing to him. It's making him whole again, it's making him well again, but we don't know what that means. That's
another good point. You're such a master of headcanon, Dave.
I have to be.
And it's, yeah, right.
Star Trek taught me.
Star Trek trained me.
It trained me for DC later on.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's all of them. It's everything. It's DC, it's Marvel.
Yeah, for sure.
Crazy.
There's headcanon everywhere, and it's required if you're the kind of guy like me who really likes internal consistency, then you just learn, and you want to be able to love anything, because especially most of these media things, they just didn't have a plan. And it's not like they knew so they make statements in one movie, then the next movie they slightly have changed their mind about the direction they want to go. And they all have these creative visions they don't want to leave behind just because the canon says so. So they make changes, and it's like, I understand from a creative perspective how you want some creative freedom. You don't want to be locked in. Basically, I'm just getting back to why are we doing a prequel? So let's move on.
Yeah, it's okay. Look, it's funny that Star Trek fans ever have any issues about canon, because Roddenberry never liked canon. Like, he didn't want the original series to be dated. That's why you hear different
start dates and things.
Well, yeah, like McCoy will say, this was 500 years ago. And then, a couple episodes later, they're like, oh, this was 200 years ago. It never lines up with anything. Right. And it was because he didn't want the show to be dated. He didn't want to say, this is when the show was set. And from what I understand, he was quite pissed when Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan said, in the 23rd century at the beginning of the movie, because that was the first time they actually identified the century that the original series or anything took place.
Oh, that's funny.
So, yeah. I don't know. They had taken him off of the movies by that point.
Right.
Anyway, thank you, man. Thank you for writing in.
Yeah. And your point is well taken, by the way. I feel like we argued the point, but I think it's also like, it's fair. They just made a creative choice, and it's just different.
Yeah.
Like in the end, we can headcanon all we want, but it is different because they wanted to tell a certain story, and they just went with whatever they wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's what happened. But Ronald D. Moore totally knew he totally knew that Zephram Cochrane from the original series.
Sure.
That was the Trials and Tribulations episode of DS9 was totally like his little love letter. Like he knew every frame of it. He knew every frame of that episode too.
Such a great love letter to the original series. I love that episode.
Absolutely. That's probably my favorite episode of Star Trek overall, period. Like, not just, I don't know. It's just, it's so great.
Mine's the one where everyone de-evolves on the Enterprise D.
It is not. Stop. That is one of my favorites. I hate that episode. I think it's called Genesis. I hate that episode so much. But it's mostly because our friend Spencer, my brother-in-law.
Yeah. Spencer's the reason that episode pops to mind all the time as like a bad Star Trek episode.
Well, it was a bad episode. It was really awful.
But you go ahead. What happened to Spencer?
Okay, it's an episode of Next Generation. So I met our friend Spencer. He was Matt's friend first, but we had gotten close, and he knew I was a massive Star Trek fan, and every time he happened to sit down and go, oh, Next Generation, okay, I'll give it a shot, it was always that same episode somehow. Yeah. And he wound up watching that episode like 3 or 4 times and just being like, why is this show so bad? And I was like, you stop watching that episode. Like, I'm telling you it's bad. Don't. Yeah. But I think that may, like, aside from like the J.J. Abrams stuff, that, oh, no, he was exposed to some DS9 and liked it when he was living with you.
Yeah, I think it was just really funny that all through his, like, early years, I think it wasn't even just after he met you and tried to like it. Like, I think it was, like, growing up, he kept coming across that episode and would be like, this show is dumb. And then he saw that we liked it and was like, what? How? Why do you like that? That's that thing where Worf becomes a spider, right?
Yeah, and we had that conversation, and then we're like at like the Baptist campus ministry at AUM in college, and we're in the little rec area, and I'm like, hey, Star Trek's Next Generation's coming on. You're gonna sit down and you're gonna like this episode. It's gonna be good. Like they're all better, and it was that episode again.
Yeah. Could predict the end where that story was going.
It's like, son of a bitch.
Yeah. It's just the fate of Spencer. It's like a weird, you get to watch all the Star Trek you want forever, but it's only that episode. It's like a weird Twilight Zone twist.
Deanna Troi has gills. Gills. I'm so dumb. Anyway.
Right. What's our next piece of feedback?
All right. So, yes, Dylan Diggs says, hey guys, thank you for your podcast. I had avoided Discovery after the pilot episodes for a variety of reasons. Grumpiness about the style/tech. Why the heck is it not post-Voyager? I don't know. Dislike of the pilot. CBS All Access, and a general skepticism of new things. Because
let me just say, I love when people know themselves.
Yeah, it's refreshing. Because y'all pushed us though, I have the opportunity to watch the first season in conjunction with your rewatch. To my surprise, I really enjoyed it, especially Lorca. I know he's all mirror universe and has bad intentions, but a realist Star Trek captain was really fun to watch. He just added a different element to the show dynamic, which might be related to my next point. Honestly, I would have been happy if they cut off the first 2 episodes and the last 2. There are some great parts in them, but those 4 seemed super rushed and kind of disjointed from the overall narrative. To be honest, I would have been happy to just spend the whole second half of the show in the mirror universe. Last point, you know what I would love though? It'll never happen. We never got Enterprise Season 5 to show us the Romulan War. I hope CBS brings back Enterprise for a 1 season. Everybody's older, of course, but they're in the heat of the war, even if it was a TV movie. While I would love for CBS All Access to be more accessible, I think the medium has potential to do stuff like this. Redo the Enterprise finale. Rant over. Thanks again, guys. Let's just kind of go back through this piecemeal a little bit.
I like the idea of going, not necessarily rewriting what they did, but doing more Enterprise would be really cool. Or bringing back Archer for a movie or whatever would be fun.
I would be fine with maybe doing the Romulan War. There was the finale was really about bringing the Federation together, but I don't like, they were so far away from the Romulan War if you go by like all like canon indications. Like they were like 10 years away from the Romulan War, I think, right, if I remember correctly.
Well, that's why it would be kind of fun to jump back in. Like you could even focus on a different ship altogether. But maybe Archer is like the fleet admiral or something like that at that point, and you just have you have like a Romulan War, but bring back it being 10 years later is perfect because he's a little older now, and like bring him back as a main character in that part of the series would be super fun.
Yeah, I would be down for that.
Are you listening, CBS? That's a really good idea.
Yeah, I would love to see the Romulan War, like a mini-series or something.
Yeah. Cause that kind of shit I think would bring in, so just like the Picard series, obviously the Picard series is perfect, and it's gonna, like, it's a perfect lure to bring back Star Trek fans, cause I think TNG is the last, like, most popular Star Trek, and it's a great lure to bring back in old fans. that haven't fallen for Discovery. But things like that, like little love letters to the fans that like a lot of us really do like Enterprise. It was a good show in the end. And, to bring some of that back would be really cool. Yeah.
I mean, it was a good show at the beginning. It was just, prequel TNG, it was fine. But yeah, it was very, 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 very solid at the end. Last couple seasons I thought were pretty damn great, honestly. And, I would love to see a Romulan War series if they, stuck to their canon. Or stuck to canon.
Like if you're gonna make prequels, you probably shouldn't make an ongoing series prequel because it just becomes really difficult to be creative in a space where you know what's going to happen. But shorter run things like movies or miniseries, like they talked about the Khan miniseries, I'd be absolutely interested in stuff like that.
I think CBS decided that didn't have enough ROI.
Yeah, I think they did too. But I just mean things like that, like where you're going to tell a specific story instead of trying to tell a big sweeping what's going on in the universe, like Discovery. Unfortunately, we're in a place where you're trying to tell this prequel while you're trying not to piss off Star Trek fans, and Star Trek fans are very picky about their canon. And as we've discussed on this show, we're very picky about very different things in canon.
We are.
And so I'm sure the producers of the show are the same way. So there's probably producers of the show that are like, I'm really picky about this thing. And I'm sure other fans will be fine because I'm sticking to the things that are important. And we're all like, no, we care about completely different parts of canon. It's silly, man.
Yeah. And it's going to be rough if they do the Romulan War because Enterprise already pissed off a bunch of fans because in Balance of Terror, the first episode with the Romulans in the original series, there was some vague line about, they didn't have ship-to-ship contact or something. They didn't have view screens or something like that. And I think it was a very vague line, and then fans kind of made that into whatever they felt like it was.
Right.
And then, they're looking at Enterprise and they're like, it's like 10 years before the Romulan War. They've got frickin' view screens. What the hell? But then when we actually meet the Romulans in Enterprise, we don't see ship-to-ship contact with the Romulans because we assume the Romulans don't have it or something. So it's like they got around canon.
Right.
In Enterprise, and I think that just pissed people off because it wasn't whatever they had set in their head. And also, you had a lot of extended universe stuff that people had kind of taken to heart. But anyway, as far as the style and tech of Discovery, what do you think about? Because we talked about it in our last Discovery review a little bit, but then you sent me a YouTube video, and I'll put the link in the description.
Oh yeah, that was really cool.
It was really cool because
I was curious because we were discussing whether the holograms on DS9 looked good or not, and I remembered them looking good, but I wasn't sure. And you remembered them not looking good, but you weren't sure. We were like, yeah, I don't know. And there's a whole YouTube video that goes over the history of holograms in the Star Trek universe. And it actually really lines up well, at least based on what this YouTuber's saying. Like the way that holograms developed, even from Enterprise to Discovery to the original series, all the way through. And I think that's really, really fun. And you had an article that actually was interesting too.
I found an article, and by the way, what I was saying about, I think what I was thinking about in DS9 was, I was like conflating a couple of things. Like, I remember there being like a kind of a digitally like blurry hologram of something they were showing somebody somewhere on DS9.
Sure.
But then like the hologram, con system, the hologram communications I saw in that video, I did not even remember, and they looked fantastic.
Yeah, they look like photorealistic.
Yeah,
holograms.
And it's been probably 10 years since I went back and watched DS9 all the way through.
Yeah, so, it's about time for me, I think.
But yeah, I did or I didn't do it. I found an article that was really interesting. And I'm not saying that this line makes Discovery completely line up in canon for me, but there was a really interesting article where this guy postulated that, when Pike had the holographic system taken out of the Enterprise, shortly thereafter he became captain of the fleet.
Yeah.
And he just hated it. So he had he just brought it back to simplicity. Like I was saying last week, what Scotty said, the more you overthink the plumbing, the easier it is to stop up the drain. So Pike just, as captain of the fleet, had them take out all of the holographic con systems because he liked the simplicity of not having them. And then it just became the standard.
Plus he's the fleet captain. He doesn't want all those ghosts. I mean, don't get me wrong. He ain't afraid of no ghost.
Right.
But he doesn't need all those ghosts hanging around.
But yeah, that video you sent me was very, it was very convincing in some ways. Cause Spock and Kirk are looking at the hologram and they're going, I'll be damned. There's a hologram. Yeah. There's a projector though.
Right. So they knew about holograms. They knew it was possible to do communications through holograms. There was no projector visible. That's how they tackle it in TOS, which is oh, wait. So they know about holographic communications. What's the problem?
Yeah. I mean, I knew they had the holodeck, sort of a holodeck in the rec room on the animated series.
Right.
But,
and all that stuff with the holodeck was really interesting too. So y'all really should watch this YouTube video. It will be in the show notes.
Absolutely.
But it is really cool because it touches on not only the holographic communications issue that we're all discussing because of Discovery, but also the holodeck and how at different points in the holodeck's history, it was done different ways. And they talk, I think, about in the original series, or I forget. At some point, it's just the visualization, and if you walk too far, you will hit a wall. Mm-hmm. And then later in Trek, they use moving force fields to get you around in a holodeck. And then even later, they use they actually replicate matter inside the holodeck. So you're actually touching a rock or a this or that. And it is being replicated. And they're also using transporter technology with the force fields to make this completely immersive experience.
Yeah.
And I think if our current technology is any indication, that is exactly how we'll get to a holodeck. That's the kind of stuff we will use our technology for in the future. Porn.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah, come on. You know that's what the holodeck's really for.
Okay.
It's clear. It's clear.
Did you ever watch that movie Trekkies?
Yes, but I don't really remember it.
During the end credits, they are showing a comedian, and I don't remember the comedian's name. There's a comedian, at a con, and he's talking about how if he was Wesley Crusher and he had a holodeck, he would just be in there basically, in porn land.
Yeah.
And I want to say he says something about how he would be in a giant vagina or something. And then Picard comes down and says, "My God, go see Counselor Troy." And he's like, "This is Counselor Troy."
Oh.
I don't know, but I
pretty good.
It's not appropriate.
It's not appropriate.
But I chuckled. It was a really odd, selection for them to put in there because they were bleeping everything out. And I'm like, this is a pretty family friendly movie. Why did you choose that section of his act?
Yeah, that Trekkies movie it seemed like it was kind of a low budget fare. I don't think that was put together by anyone official. And, I feel like, maybe that was just someone they knew that had a Star Trek bit, and they're like, "Hey, let's use that."
I mean, I don't know. I know they got interviews with a lot of actual people and whatnot. And
sure. Yeah.
I also know that movie got a lot of scorn from fans for kind of picking out the most stereotypical Trekkies and showcasing them the nerdiest people ever.
I think what they were trying to do was show the extreme nature that the fandom takes sometimes. And so to me, yes, the thing is about the extreme, weird, kind of socially inept, extreme fans, but that's what the movie was about, yeah. You're not necessarily one of those just because you like Star Trek. It's just that there are those. They exist. And I mean, we're kind of those. We're on that spectrum somewhere.
Oh, we're on a spectrum.
Oh, we're on a few spectrums.
I pump my gas at the spectrum. Anyway.
What's our next feedback, my friend?
Let's see. Okay, so on one of my episode descriptions, for our review of episode 111 of Discovery, the episode was called The Wolf Inside. I wrote in my description, Matt and I have asthmatic turtles inside, but people like Michael Burnham and Ash Tyler got freaking wolves. My wife, Bethany, wanted us to know that she has a half mermaid, half sloth inside. She also says, great podcast. I especially enjoy the trivia part. I enjoy the trivia part.
Which half of the mermaid is she?
I don't know.
Because is she like top half human, bottom half sloth? Like she's a mer-sloth? or is she like got mermaid fin with sloth body? I like mer-sloth personally. Well, she's a big Little Mermaid fan, so she kind of walks around the house singing like stuff from the Little Mermaid. So maybe she sings like Ariel, but the rest of her sloth. she's just a sloth with a golden voice.
I don't know. Bethany, let us know. Let us know what you think.
I love that. You're like, my wife, please let us know. Let me communicate with you through this podcast. So please comment on our blog. She's like in the next room. By the way, it's really sweet that she listens to the podcasts we make. It makes me feel loved. I appreciate you, Bethany.
I do too.
I have a lot of friends who love Star Trek and Marvel, and very few of them listen to my podcasts.
Isn't that weird?
Well, I feel like being a podcast person is a very specific thing. Mm-hmm. And you either I don't know, if you like podcasts, you tend to get into them, and then you get into more of them, and that leads to more of them. And then before you know it, you've subscribed to like 800 podcasts, and you may not listen to all of them every week, but you've got your favorites. And then when you run out of those, then you just start becoming the guy who just is constantly listening to something. At least that's my experience. And a few of my friends that I've like recommended getting into podcasts, and then they turn into, just like me, a complete podcast junkie where if I have a free moment, like if I got up from this desk right now to go like get myself some water or something, it's going to take me about a minute to go in there, pour the water, filter it, I will push play on my podcast that is currently paused on my phone right now. And for that minute, I will be listening to a podcast. Yeah. And then I will sit down and record more of a podcast.
See, I don't know. You warned me about that. And, I think I got about 5 or 6 podcasts in, and I just went, I'm good.
Yeah, that's a good way to be. It's good to cull your podcast every once in a while. I mean, no, it's not. Listen to this podcast forever.
Right. And it's getting back up there for me a little bit, like, cause Conan O'Brien put out a new podcast, started a new podcast. I got into, Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum. I got into Armchair Expert, with, Dax Shepard.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like I've gotten really into like seasonal podcasts that are just like 5 or 6 episodes and then they go on break for a year.
Yeah, I like that too. Podcasts can be particularly dangerous for guys like me and you who are completists. Mm-hmm. So I have to just be resolved that I am not a podcast completist.
Yeah, I'm not either. I had to do the same thing. I've actively had that thought.
I had to resolve it because if not, I will go and listen to every episode. And even our podcasts, we record hours and hours a week, and we've been doing it for years. There's a lot of content to make it through, and I am always incredibly flattered when someone says, "Hey, I'm catching up on your podcast. Here's a comment about episode 200," and I'm like, wow, I don't even know
what we talked about.
Yeah, I don't remember what episode 200 was about, but it's really super flattering when people do that. But I am definitely tempted to do that with almost every new podcast I get into. But I've just had to be like, nope, just unless there's like only 3 episodes, then I'm just starting wherever they are and I'm just joining them.
Yeah, and like people, like when people like message me for the first time on Twitter or whatever for DC on Screen, they'll like bring up, they're referencing something I said in the last podcast. I'm like, what are you talking about? And they'll be like, remember you said blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, you're new here. I don't remember what I said in the last podcast.
Yeah, it's super, I was being flattering to us when I said way back on episode 200 or whatever. I really do mean like last week. People write in, they're like, hey, you said da 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 da, and I'm like, oh, what?
Yeah.
Don't know
like,
what that is.
That first email where it said, I think it was Dave's argument. What other? I'm like, I made that argument? That's awesome. That's a fantastic argument.
You're right. That guy is smart. Who's that? That was me?
I may have made that argument, but I was really thinking about how bad I had to pee. That's what was really happening. I mean, I don't know. Something was happening.
Yeah, man.
I don't remember these things after I make them. I think that's how I live with myself.
Yeah, like, well, we both have full-time work that we have to get done. We both have jobs and things that we try to do. And, it's really hard to do this. And sometimes you just have to like sit down, record it, think about it really hard while you're doing it, and then leave it behind. Like, I'm done with it. We'll do another one next Thursday or whatever, you know?
For as much as like opinions change, things change, people grow. But I will say this, when I have had to go back and listen to, a podcast that I did, I will often be like listening to you or Jason or whatever and be like, oh, I should have said this. And then I will say that and I'm like,
Yeah, that's really satisfying.
It is. It's weird.
I think the main reason I wanted to podcast in the first place was I listened to so many podcasts, and particularly about nerdy content like this, I almost always want to say something and I can't. Like, yeah. And it was way too difficult to go and like, you know, comment on these podcasts, like Facebook pages and stuff. So I just started podcasts, which seemed easier at the time.
Yeah, and I'm so bad about that. Like, I used to listen to a show called the Entertainment Roundtable. It was on the radio.
Yeah.
And they would be talking about something that I knew about, and I couldn't respond to them. And it would drive me nuts. Like, I'm like, why are they not mentioning this? And then, like, they started opening up the phone lines, and I would call in. And within like 3 or 4 months, I would just come in and do the show. Like, I was on that show for like 3 years.
Yeah, you just like went and you just became a radio host basically because you just couldn't stay out of the conversation. These guys don't know what they're talking about. Every time they get on a geeky topic, they just lose the thread completely.
Yeah, and to be fair, they almost never thought I knew what I was talking about, even though like we had one guy on the show who was like, no, he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was a fun time. But yeah, that's how bad I am. Like, it was inevitable that we do this podcast.
Yeah. What's the next feedback thing?
We got a really nice recommendation from Randy Christopher on our Facebook page. He recommended us and said the hosts are a lot of fun to listen to and clearly love the subject matter. Lots of banter and discussion of Trek. So I just thought that was nice. Thank you, Randy, for supporting us further. Robert Butler on our Facebook page says, I would like to see Jennifer Lien back on Star Trek, maybe as another character. I always liked her. Now that's the woman that played Cass on Star Trek Voyager.
Yeah.
I always liked her too. Unfortunately, back in 2002, she had a son and she retired from acting and voiceover work. Now that kid would probably be like, 17 now? But from 2012 to 2018, and I kept seeing this pop up over the years, but she has had like a ton of like run-ins with the law.
Oh no.
And she's been arrested for everything from domestic violence and indecent exposure to like vehicle related stuff. Like she's apparently currently undergoing mental health treatment, as I understand it. I know I saw like she like showed up like outside and naked wandering about, and she looks completely different. Like she doesn't even look like the same person. Like it's real weird. And I feel bad for her. I don't know what's going on. But I doubt you will see her back on Star Trek.
Yeah, you never know. RDJ had his problems, and he ended up being the biggest star in the world.
That's true. That's true. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. You just don't hear about her anymore. But she retired, and then all that happened. So
yeah, I hate to hear that she's going through a hard time. Sounds like some mental health issues. I hope she gets that addressed. Because and regardless whether I liked her or not, she's a human being, and I want her to be happy and healthy. But
sure.
But yeah, it's a bummer that I liked her a lot on that show. And Good luck to you out there, Jennifer Lynn. I'm not sure how to say her name.
However you say that name, yeah. Over to Instagram, I posted a couple of things. I asked which ship is your favorite, and so far we've gotten 1 vote for the original Enterprise, 4 votes for the Enterprise D, and 1 vote for the Enterprise E, and 1 vote for Voyager. So that's still going. If you guys want to go there and comment and whatever. Yeah. And also, I did an Instagram post asking whether you liked Kirk or Picard better. We have 8 for Picard and 6 for Kirk right now. So pop on over and throw in your 2 cents. It's Star Trek Universe podcast. We're starting to get a lot of good comments over there. I'm happy with the
interaction.
What is it called? Interaction.
Engagement.
I was thinking engagement. That was, you would think I would remember engagement. Engage.
Yeah.
Number 1. Yeah, engagement. I'm happy with the amount of engagement we're getting over there every time I post. So, and I'll try to remember to put up more questions like that for everyone.
Yeah, I like those. We should what we should do is end the podcast with a question like that and get everybody to go do it, and then come back with the answer. And just give them a confined amount of time. I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah, maybe so.
We'll try to think of a question at the end of the podcast.
All right. My question is, which ship is your favorite, and do you like Kirk or Picard? Go to our Instagram and tell us.
Good call. This week, that's the question. Instagram.com/Star Trek Ucast. Is that right?
No, it's a Star Trek Universe podcast.
Okay. Sorry.
1 word. Yeah. Christine Hoppy78 or Hoppy78 says, love you guys. I just read a book called Space Team by Barry J. Hutchison. They named their ship the Shatner. Made me think of Star Trek. Love them all, from the original, Next Generation, and Deep Space Nine, and all the others, although I still have to catch up on Discovery. Why isn't it on TV? Had to get Netflix just to get it. Love Star Trek and love crossovers, especially with Kirk and Picard. Oh, and if anyone liked Q, there's a book called Paradox, and it's a sequel, Paradox 2, by Philip P. Peterson. That's cool. Yeah. I have not read those books, and I might very well do it. I really enjoyed IQ by Peter David. Mm-hmm. And I know you're a big fan of Q Squared.
Yeah, I liked Q Squared a lot.
I remember thinking that was really good. I really loved the Greg Cox trilogy, the Q Continuum trilogy. Did you ever read those?
I couldn't make it through them. I think I just.
Oh man.
I at some point in my life I just stopped being a reader.
I love those books because they introduced like a godlike character who was like a quote unquote bad influence on Q in his youth, and they also they linked up Q with the god creature that was stranded behind the barrier in Star Trek V. Apparently the Q Continuum put him there. And they linked him up with the little creature that feeds on hate, that causes people to hate so they could feed off of it, from Day of the Dove in the original series. I just thought that was such a cool, and they brought in Q2 or the female Q or whatever. I just thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome.
A fantastic series.
I know that's a particular thing you like in those Star Trek book series, is when they take a good, they go back and kind of tread over old Star Trek ground to tie a lot of things together.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun.
It's one of the reasons I love the Preserver stuff in the Judith and Garfield Reeve Stevens Shatner books.
Yeah.
But yeah, so absolutely. I think we've kind of been over why they put Discovery on CBS All Access. I think it does. I don't think it would go. I don't think it would do well on network television. Network television is really just for reality shows and procedurals these days. You can't have anything interesting on network TV, or it just doesn't do well.
Yeah, that's probably fair. But also, I think the more specific reason they put it on CBS All Access, and I don't even necessarily mean this in a negative way, I kind of do, but they're exploiting the fandom. They're using the fandom for all it's worth. I mean, Star Trek has fans, and they are putting it in a place where we have to pay for they gave us the first taste for free, the first 50 years of tastes for free. And now we have to pay for Star Trek. It's just, that's the way that they've decided to do it. It's the old drug dealer model. And, they know they've got a product people want, and they're using our fandom to make money. And like, that's fine. I'm happy to pay for it as long as they keep making good Star Trek. I'm happy to pay for CBS All Access. But as I've said over and over, the thing that worries me about that is you're never going to expand your audience that way. What interests me about these comments, though, she says she's watching it on Netflix. I wonder what country she's in.
Yeah, what country are you in, Christine? Because
they don't have it here in America. They don't have it on Netflix.
Right.
But I know that...
Tell us where you are.
Pretty much every other country does. But awesome to have an international listener.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the comment. And the recommendations. Let's see. We have Matt Vader over on Twitter says, I'm having a good time diving back into Star Trek after a long hiatus. In doing so, I've been searching out some new related media and found Star Trek UCast. That's us. These guys have a really good show. I completely relate. They are fair, have good banter, and are entertaining. Listen.
Hey, thanks, Matt.
And I assume this is one of his followers, Chad, at, I think it might be Yusuku or Yusuku 13. Maybe it's You Suck You, man. But he says, he asks Matt if we cover books and comics as well as the movies and TV shows. Kind of. We've talked a lot about books tonight.
That's true. We have. We're going to stick to the bigger stuff is going to be more of what we talk about, the movies, the TV, but, I'm definitely open to doing a comic book or a book. And obviously we're going to touch on it whenever we have knowledge, but truth is, at some point in my life, I stopped being a reader.
Yeah. And, I will say this. I don't keep up with the books currently unless someone really I keep up with stuff like I got that Star Trek at 50 artwork book. I really enjoyed that. It was just a lot of different artists doing artwork based on Star Trek that they enjoyed, and I will keep up with stuff that's talking about a production standpoint, behind the scenes stuff. I've read a bunch of that anyway over the years. I am woefully behind as far as reading the actual fiction that they put out, but they don't put out quite as much as they used to. I am familiar with a lot of it. And as far as the comics go, I have a ton of old comics, and I don't get into a lot of the IDW crossover stuff. Like they just did Star Trek and Transformers, and the Enterprise turned into a Transformer or something. It looked dumb. I didn't want to read it.
Yeah.
But the Green Lantern Star Trek crossover looked pretty cool. So I don't know. I'm open to a lot of it, and I will read it if it's available for free, like a free borrowing situation on Kindle through Amazon Prime or something. But I did read the Kelvin Universe ongoing Star Trek comics that kind of retold a bunch of the original series episodes in the new Kelvin timeline. I thought those were solid as hell. But I have contacts with Michael Jan Friedman, who wrote a lot of the novels, including one of my favorites, Crossover, and a number of the comics from the DC line back in the day. And I don't know, maybe I can suck up to him or something and get him on the show sometime. But
that'd be rad.
I'll try. I have no promises on that. But yeah, I do have a certain affinity for the books. So maybe we'll talk about it more, or I will. It might be a solo adventure.
Talking about actually reading books, I have probably read more Star Trek books than any other type of books for sure, and maybe more Star Trek books than any books, than all other types of books combined. Just because when I was young and a voracious reader, like I really like poured through I would get them and just read a Star Trek book and big novel in 2 days or whatever. I'd tear through them. But at some point, you know, the truth is I just stopped being a reader.
Star Trek has been responsible for a lot of my reading as well. Like hundreds of magazines. I used to be an avid subscriber of Star Trek Communicator, fantastic magazine from back in the day, and Star Trek Magazine, which was really good for like looking at a lot of the. It was good for someone who liked to draw. Like I love to draw, and I used to love to draw the Star Trek characters, and I couldn't remember what their technology looked like. Back then, we didn't have HD episodes to look at, so like they would put out these books that had like technical specs, and they would like show all of the the phasers and the communicators and everything, and that was really awesome for someone who was really into that like me. But so I've read a lot of way more Star Trek books than anything else in my life, probably.
Yeah.
Except for maybe comic books, and a big chunk of those were Star Trek comic books.
I really wish they'd make more of it available on Audible, or more of it available in general on audiobook. I recently wanted to revisit the Star Trek Shatner series of books.
Oh, yeah.
Preserver. And so I went to Audible, and they've got most of them, but they're all abridged.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah, me too. And I still bought them. They were only like $2 each on Audible, so I just like bought all of them, and I've been planning to go through them, but I'm discouraged because they're abridged. So I just haven't even. You
could get one of those like reader apps and just like buy the whole thing on Kindle or something, and have the reader app read it to you in that robot voice.
Yeah, I do that from time to time with articles. Like if I really want to like really read up on something, and I just don't have that much time to sit and read. Like I'm almost always moving or driving or writing music, or like just being a musician. I'm always on the road, and I'm always doing something, and I just can't always. Until we get a little more technologically advanced and I can have a driverless car, I just don't have the time to read like I want to. So I just do a lot of my reading on audio. And yeah, I have done that many times. When I wanted to, one of the most recent things I did is I learned to play Magic the Gathering, and I wanted to get good at it. And there's all these articles on like strategy. So I did not have time to read, and there's just like 50 articles in this one series on strategy of Magic, and I just like, I pulled it up and I kept just copy and pasting it into one of those reader apps, and robot voiced my way through a bunch of Magic the Gathering strategy. So I also tried to read Spencer's book that way. Our buddy Spencer, which we just mentioned.
I
tried reading his book that way because I'm just such a bad reader. I just don't ever have time to do it. And then I think I just run so much that if I ever do stop to read, I just like fall asleep.
Yeah, I can see that.
I burn the candle at both ends, man.
I do too. And it sucks because, it's tough. It's tough to like do all that. And like, look, I got a friend, my friend Scott, from Suicide Squad cast. That dude, they do Patreon episodes. He has his own little show on Patreon called Scott Shots. He has kids. He has a job, like a full-time job. This man watches almost everything that we watch on the DC side. He watches just so much stuff. Movies. He stays up with movies. And like beside his bed, he's got like a stack of books. And he's constantly reading. Like I get updates from his Goodreads like every day. Like what the hell are you doing? Are you like stepping inside of like a little like pocket universe where time doesn't exist? What is happening?
Yeah, it's hard to keep up with everything these days, and I'm impressed when people do it so well.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Today, I am wiped out today because I had maybe the hardest working experience of my life last night. I was supposed to play. Well, I was not supposed to play with this band. I was supposed to run sound for a band, and so the job of running sound is basically like 2 hours of really intense physical labor at the beginning to set up the sound system, and then about 3 or 4 hours of kind of break, because you're doing sound work, but you're mostly just like touching an iPad. You're not doing very, very hard physical labor. And then about an hour at the end of hard physical labor, loading all the stuff back in the trailer, and then you're done. And so they were renting my sound system, and I was running sound for the band. And then it turned out their singer, basically, I had to take over the singing duties as well. Last minute. So I ended up working for 2 hours, really hard physical labor. Then I'm getting on stage and performing for 4 hours, which was really intense, running around the stage, dancing and singing. And then another hour of hard physical labor. And then I had to drive, 2 hours each way on the end of that. I got home and I just couldn't move, man. It was rough. Yeah. And then I had a hike scheduled for today, which against my better judgment, I went through with. And so I woke up this morning and did like a 7-mile hike this morning. Ugh. And so I am completely exhausted tonight. It's been amazing, honestly. It's been a great day. I'm finally getting to the point physically where like I'm able to do some of those things, and at the end of them, I feel energized by them, kind of. Yeah. Like I hit a bit of a runner's high if I do a lot of physical activity. I don't think I've talked about it on this cast at all, but I've been losing weight, and I was really up. My weight, I'd gotten very, very heavy, and I've lost 133 pounds now.
Man, that's crazy and great.
Yeah, man.
Good job.
Thanks, brother. Thanks. But I'm finally getting to the point where really intense physical activity doesn't make me feel like I'm going to die. It makes me feel like I actually hit the endorphins and sort of the runner's high, sort of like I start to actually dig the exercise, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep moving. I'm sort of like voraciously hungry to keep moving, instead of, walking for 15 minutes and feel like I'm going to die. So things are improving on this end.
Yeah, I mean, I've been exercising like pretty much every day.
Yeah, and you're doing really well.
Yeah, I've lost close to 50 at this point, but
that's amazing, man. You didn't have that much to lose. You got to be getting small. I haven't seen you in a couple months.
I mean, it's one of those things where like I went to the doctor recently and they were like, "Yeah, you're doing a good job," and I was talking about like, yeah, I mean, as far as like my BMI goes and everything, like I feel like I'm still looking at like 40 or 50 pounds. But like already like my family is like, you look so sick and thin. You look like you're dying.
Families do that though. Like I am still in the high 300-pound range. And my family's like, you're just looking so small.
Yeah. And like, dude, my doctor was like, no, you're overweight.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, that's what I'm saying. I got like 40 or 50 to go. She's like, I don't know. That might be too far. I'm like, oh, that's nice to hear. But,
that's awesome, man. Yeah, that is really awesome. I've still got a whole long way to go, but I've been moving in the right direction for a good 10 months now. Actually, almost a year. I think I just hit a year of losing weight. So, do we have any more feedback?
Man. Absolutely. We've got a couple more.
Okay. let's get, sorry. I always like these kinds of conversations that are more just get to know me and you conversations.
Yeah.
I enjoy having them on the cast, but I hate if people are like waiting for Star Trek talk. But for me, it's like if it's at the end of the cast, it's like we talk about whatever we want. You don't like it, you can bail out.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's finish up. Let's get to the last couple feedbacks.
So Chuck Credo the Fourth, or Chuck Credo 4, on Twitter says, at Star Trek UCast, just discovered the show. Well done. Looking forward to new episodes. Welcome, dude. Or
yeah, man. Lady.
I just realized I know a couple of girls named Chuck.
Well, so thanks, Chuck.
Thank you.
You're probably a boy. That's our response to your comment.
That's a very Mitch Hedberg thing to say, too. Hey, thank you for your comment, Chuck. You were probably a boy.
That's a good Mitch Hedberg, man.
Thank you. All right, so last but certainly not least, this is a listener to DC on Screen. She's amazing, always bringing us good comments, and a loyal listener. She's come over here. She says, listening to the cast has convinced me to watch Discovery. I was going to wait until it ended and then binge it because I didn't want to pay for one more streaming service. But you make it sound interesting.
Yay.
I was happy with that.
Yeah, man, that's really my favorite things. Favorite emails we've gotten so far are people that are like, you know what? I'm giving Discovery a chance.
Yeah.
That's cool. You know, just because even if you give it a chance and don't like it, that's fine. Mm-hmm. But like, if you're a Star Trek fan, give it a chance.
Yeah. And go follow Nerdytastic on Twitter.
Oh, that was Nerdytastic. I'm sorry, I missed that. Yeah, she's awesome.
She's awesome. Did she do it on the MCU cast as well?
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
For sure.
Awesome.
Good to hear from you, Nerdytastic.
I think that's it. I think that's everything.
All right.
It's too late. I've seen it all.
Well, guys, thanks for hanging out with us. If you want to hear us ramble on more about things that aren't related to Star Trek, let us know. We'll do more of that. No. I really, I never mind when hosts of shows talk about their lives.
Me either.
Unless they overdo it at the top of the show. Mm-hmm. Like if I'm there to hear you talk about murder, which, you know, I mentioned that because one of a very popular podcast, about murder. Most of you probably know know the show. I'll just say it. I don't know why I'm being coy.
Yeah, that's weird.
There's a show called My Favorite Murder. Uh-huh. And it's every week these two women get on and bring their favorite murder. It's a joke. It's a joke, of course. They just bring a interesting murder story. Mm-hmm. Like a true to life murder story. But I find it very frustrating because I'm there for sort of the interesting, they don't get too graphic. There's some murder shows that are way too graphic for me, but they just kind of tell like sort of interesting, creepy stories.
Yeah.
But they will take 30 minutes before they get to any of that. And the same way there's actually a Star Trek podcast. One of the reasons I want to start this one is because one of the biggest Star Trek podcasts, every time I search for Star Trek podcasts, it's up near the top, is these guys who will and so anyone listening to this has probably stumbled across that one. They will just ramble on about their lives for like 40 minutes before they get to any Star Trek. Mm-hmm. It's like, save the stuff that is for you for the end of the show. Like a little like how you doing is fine, but like talking for 40 minutes about what's going on in your kids' lives, I'm like, I'm here for Star Trek. Like I like to get to know the podcasters, and eventually I have a strong affection for the podcasters I'm listening to because I know who they are, I know their personalities, I know how they respond to certain media. Like it's fun to get to know your podcaster. Mm-hmm. But like
you come for the subject matter, you stay for the podcaster.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so that's one of the reasons I felt it was important to start a Star Trek podcast because I still have not found a Star Trek podcast I like.
I haven't either. And, you know, I haven't listened to a ton of them. Like I listened to a few, and a lot of them have that issue where like I will start to listen to it and it's just like, it's awesome for your regular listeners. I'm a new listener. I don't know your inside jokes. I don't know what you guys, you know, did in college. What are we talking about here? Like, like, you guys are making references to shit you did in college, and I'm sitting here going, this is a Star Trek show, right?
Yeah, and I think we do that. We tell stories about Spencer all the time because he's one of our best friends. But I think every time we do it, we say, we have a buddy named Spencer, and here is a thing that he did. We try to tell the story as if we're telling it to someone who's never met us or doesn't know us, you know?
But also, we were talking about that, like, what was it, 20 minutes into the show? Like when we'd already been talking about Star Trek for a while, like, and
we generally try to keep it tight. And even when, you know, we got into the weight loss stuff, which went on probably 5 minutes, I was like, we should finish the Star Trek talk. I don't know. I think that's an important thing. I think it's a service to the listener. And obviously, you know, we're done with Star Trek talk now. If you don't want to hear us talk about our podcast process, you know, like, I totally get that, and I'm not offended by bailing out at all. You're here for Star Trek.
This is the closest I'll get to being able to do a podcast masterclass.
This is definitely not a master class. If anything, it's a novice class. This is not really serving anyone. This is pure wank, what we're doing right now. And I'm fine with it because it's at the end of the show.
First, you start off the show with a little tidbit of information about yourself, or a joke.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. But you save the wanking for the end.
I don't know. Jason and I are pretty bad about wanking. we try to get to the show first.
As long as you're wanking in universe. Like if you're talking ridiculous and it's honestly, if you're being funny, it really doesn't matter. These are not rules. These are all just guidelines. But if you're being interesting, you're being interesting. It's fine. But like, I just find I find it when podcasters think they're interesting, they never are. Like you gotta.
By that measure, we are the most interesting podcast in the world.
That's very true. Like, I don't think I'm interesting. Sure, I'm a badass musician who also loves nerdy things. Ladies. Just kidding. But,
wow.
Like, I don't think I'm interesting enough for you to just listen to me talk about me, especially at the top of the show.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like to talk about ideas more than I like talking about myself. I don't know. Whatever. This has been fun.
Yes. I really enjoy our podcast episodes. I really enjoy our fan cast episodes.
Oh yeah.
Our feedback episodes.
Feedback episodes. Me too, man. I really, really do. It's, we've only, this maybe the second one or third one. But I really I've liked them a lot.
I think they are my favorite thing to do.
Yeah. It's us doing what we've always done. The reason we started this podcast is because we have been doing this podcast since we were 6 years old, standing in front of our church, avoiding going into the service and talking about, the next generation or whatever.
Well, if we did it during the service, they'd poke us.
Yes. So we'd have to sneak out.
We didn't sneak out.
I did sometimes.
You did, but I was a square.
I was
afraid.
Well, we would hang out whenever we could away from things and avoid being part of things so we could just stand off to the side and talk about Star Trek and Marvel and Batman.
Death of Superman.
That was
a pretty big one.
It was a good era, man. It was Death of Superman, the Bane storyline, Nightfall storyline.
Yeah, it was dope.
In Batman. Next Generation was on the air. We were just, it was rarefied air. It's stuff that I just still look back on with great affection. I remember seeing the first clip for DS9, like the first commercial. It was like 6 or 7 months before the show came out. They like did a teaser commercial in the middle of the night for some reason. Yeah. Weird way to have an ad campaign, but like I remember seeing it and telling you about it the next day. I was like, I saw a thing. There's apparently more Star Trek coming.
Oh yeah, man. Star Trek was so popular back then. They would run ads all day and night. Like Next Generation was like the most popular thing on TV.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Which was weird.
That is weird.
Those were good times though, man. Like, even over in X-Men, we were like, holy shit, Professor X's onslaught because he absorbed Magneto's, consciousness.
Exactly. Like, all that's just good stuff, man. All the X-Men stuff and just talking about the history of all the X-Men and the Batman and the Superman comics.
You don't understand. The new Green Lantern is a comic book artist. You see what they did there?
That's real good. It's real good. All right, guys. Well, we are the Star Trek Universe Podcast. Thank you for hanging out with us. We'll be back real soon with more Star Trek Universe Podcast. I guess probably Thursday or Friday with Discovery.
With the Discovery. Yeah, with a Discovery review.
Woo!
It's a good show. I'm enjoying it.
Me too. Do we know how long it's going to run before they take a break? Are they taking a break this year, or is it running through the whole season?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that news, and I might just be woefully negligent in my duties here, but I haven't seen that. I don't know.
Right.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm just curious.
I'm so sorry.
You tend to keep up with that stuff better than I do.
I know, and I failed you here.
Well, guys, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon. Back this week with Discovery. Peace.
Live long and prosper.
To reach out to us, hit us up at StarTrekUcast.com, at StarTrekUcast on Twitter, Star Trek Universe Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for us there, or send us a message at StarTrekUcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to hear more from David C. Roberson, check out the DC On Screen podcast or maladjusted.tv. And if you want to hear more from Matthew Carroll, that's me, check out the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast or go listen to my music at MatthewCarrollmusic.com or anywhere you get music.